Welcome back, hockey fans, to another episode of Off the Iron Podcast. It's the Goodwin brothers, Adam
and Evan,
back at it with another episode. Lots and lots of news to get to, but before we get to that, just a quick reminder that Off the Iron Podcast is brought to you by Rocky Mountain Barbecue Catering. Drop by the storefront to pick any one of our lunch combos up with any one of our signature smoked meats, sausages, or burgers, with 2 sides and a drink for just $12. Open 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on weekdays. Go visit them at 5303 68th Avenue, Southeast Calgary. Also, don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook and Instagram, Off the Iron Podcast, on Twitter, at Off the Iron Pod, our Gmail, offtheironpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, check us out on YouTube if you want the visual fix. Videos of our episodes are usually uploaded a couple days after the audio episodes go out, but
usually I'm a little behind.
It's okay. Sometimes life
we
gets
switched
in the way.
up all the music. I got to redo all the clips and everything, so
Yeah.
It's a little bit more involved.
Exactly. It's been a while. I believe our last episode was on March 2nd, and of course nothing has happened at all in response to the Flames. Nothing big has happened. Everything's normal. Still going with Jeff Ward behind the bench. And wait, do we change coaches?
Yeah, a little bit.
Is it 2003 again?
It might be, yeah. 2003 revisited for sure. Adam and I purposely kind of held off a little bit on this just to see how the team would react under a new coach, Daryl Sutter, as opposed to, jumping on this right away and getting an episode out to you. So we've got a little bit of some breakdowns, what we're liking under the new coach, what we're not, and going forward, what we think the Flames are and what they were going to be. But before we dive into that, you're right. Lots changed in the Flames world, but I'll just run through what we're going to talk about in this episode. First and foremost, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Daryl Sutter. The folklore surrounding him in the city is amped up in the last been amped up in the last couple of weeks, understandably. So we got a lot to say about that. And then, of course, we're going to dive into our Flames focus section like we always do. With that, we'll take a trip around the North Division, talk about a few things. The Leafs on a little bit of a slide. The Oilers are climbing the standings in a hurry, and I don't like it. And the Canucks and Demko have played their way back into a little bit of a conversation, although they're running out of games. Next, we're going to talk about news from the rest of the league, talk about a few surprises out there, mainly Minnesota and the Islanders. And then some disappointments. I think you can all know who we're going to talk about in this section. Buffalo. Boom, boom, boom. And
speaking of coaching changes.
Yeah, speaking of coaching changes, exactly. So we'll get into a few disappointments from around the league. Talk about a few trade rumors that are out there, around a couple pretty good pieces that might be available at the trade deadline this year. And then, like we always do, finish off our podcast with our OTI top 5 section, where Adam and I run down a top 5 list of the category of the week. And this week we're talking about 2021 season Vezina candidates so far. So halfway through the season now, we're going to talk or run down our top 5 lists for the Vezina Trophy this year so far.
Absolutely, and it's going to be an interesting year for Vezina. Some names in there that maybe you wouldn't expect, and some household names maybe not in the conversation as much as normal years. So looking forward to that later in the episode. But I guess we should start off with the big news. Of course, we mentioned it off the top. Daryl Sutter back in town. he's back down from Viking. He's done with the ranching for now. He's left it with the family, and he's behind
figured
the
out
bench.
the Zoom calls.
Yeah. It's been a bit of a whirlwind couple weeks. It's just so strange, but also nice to see him behind the bench because, I was very critical of Daryl Sutter when near hit the end of his run here because I think he was a horrible GM, but everyone knew he was an excellent coach. There was never any questions about his ability to coach.
Yeah.
We saw it, with Calgary, and then when he was hired in LA, took them from a struggling team to 2 Stanley Cups. So his ability to coach has never been in question for me, but happy to see him behind the bench instead of in the GM chair.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a blast from the past for sure. My mind immediately goes back to the Red Mile, of course.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Red Mile podcast as well. Another good Calgary Flames podcast, amply named with the lore of the Red Mile. Yeah, I mean, is he the guy for the job? He can do it. I don't think he's the guy long term here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think that, right now he will get more out of this core and these players than Jeff Ward would have, just from the way that his approach and the way he goes about it. I think he definitely got the job on his name. Whether he was the right guy for the job, we'll see. I'm not as high on Daryl Sutter as a lot of people are around here, just because I do think the NHL is a lot different now than when Sutter was coaching. So we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't mind it. It's certainly a better option than Ward. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And there's a certain respect that comes with his name. You can expect some accountability, which this team needs desperately.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I like some of the stuff that's come out from other media sources saying like, we're going to find out, who's committed to winning and who wants to win and who wants to be here long term and whether they're a right fit with this team. It's definitely not a long-term option. He is signed for 2 years past this season, but it's going to be an interesting offseason if the Flames miss the playoffs. If I think with Sutter being here, they're going to get a clearer picture of who's going to be here long term. I know that we got some decisions coming up in terms of personnel. Some top players are nearing the end of their contracts and facing criticism. So I think with Daryl Sutter, we'll get a clearer picture whether he, as you said, whether he'll be the fit long term past the rest of the season and the next 2. I would put my money on him not being here, but I don't mind it for this season. Try to get him a push to make the playoffs with a chance to go to the Final Four in an all-Canadian division setup. It's going to be any team in Canada's best chance to get to the Final Four, probably in a lot of years. A lot of regular years, it would be much harder, but much better chance of going on a run this year with how even the North Division is and how sort of every team is. There's no elite team. Obviously, Toronto's at the top right now. They show that they've been the best team over the course of the year, but certainly beatable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get the Sutter hire because they had to do something, and it's a lot easier to change your coach, obviously, especially one that will come in and shake a few trees, rattle a few cages. If he doesn't think you're playing well, you're going to know it, and you're likely going to ride the pine for it, which I think fosters a kind of team culture of accountability, which the Flames have not had for the last several years. And Ward was not feeding into that kind of culture either, which
No.
you can tell by the results. I get the hire from Treliving's perspective. He's trying to save his ass here, I think, a little bit, and wean out who needs to go and who doesn't. It comes back to my point last podcast where I don't believe the Flames have been built to play the style of hockey that we keep getting fed that they think they should play, and that is bang and crash, dump and chase. Our team's not built for bang and crash, dump and chase. That's why I'm a little hesitant on Sutter as the head coach, because that's the way that he loves to play. Up tempo, constant high pressure forechecking, obviously skate your ass off, back check, tight defensive coverage in your zone, tight checking hockey, physical hockey. And I would say maybe half of our team plays that way and half don't. So it's going to be, I'm not very optimistic, to be honest. I'm not. I think we're going to quickly see, and we'll get into what we like and what we dislike after 6 games, but I think we're quickly going to see that the core is the problem here. And not to dog on those guys again, but it's becoming apparent that the core is not going to work here. I'm already at that after 6 games with him, and coaching was never the problem in my mind. It's execution. It's mainly it's execution. Our top guys are not being our top guys, and that's the problem. But we'll see. So as I kind of rambled on a little bit there, but so I get the hire from Treliving's perspective. Sutter is going to wean out who is going to put in the effort to be here and who's not, and will hopefully help him make some off-ice, off-season decisions, because we're at a turning point with this club. It's either a quick let go of a few pieces, retool, and go at it, or it might be a whole fire sale. Who knows? I don't think it's a whole fire sale. I don't think we're there yet, but we definitely have to retool a little bit, I think, and give some opportunities to some of our young guys coming up. But anyways, let's jump into a quick analysis of the 6 games under Sutter. What are your thoughts? What do you like? Let's start with what you like. What do you like under Sutter? Like how have the Flames improved under his tutelage?
Well, it's certainly, the work ethic has been a little bit more consistent and more intense. I think you can tell that they're at least competing every night. There hasn't been a game, even though some of the results haven't been good, like the 7-3 loss against Edmonton. I never thought like it was from a standpoint of, oh, they're just not trying out there. It's lack of execution, sloppy plays, that kind of thing. And in that game specifically, a lot of D-zone turnovers, and Markstrom didn't have his best night, and that's what happens when you play against McDavid and Draisaitl and you're turning pucks over and your goalie isn't good and your D-core struggles a little bit as well. That's usually what happens against those two guys, a little 7-3 defeat. And that's
how about that Draisaitl feed. I just want to point that out. Whew, yeah, man, that was nice.
Yeah, I put a little tweet out on the Off the Iron account, like, what a fucking play by Draisaitl. My goodness. Like, that's just unfair. Dominic Cahoon with an easy goal after that setup, with a little between the legs deflection from big Draisaitl there. So certainly the work ethic, I think, has been more consistent under Sutter. They do seem to be playing with more pace. It's not like a huge difference, I don't think. Like, they're playing faster, but they still look slow at times, especially on the power play. I know that's definitely one thing that we're going to be bringing up with what we don't like. The power play has not been good. It's just very static, but getting back to things that I like the way the bottom 6 has been playing, specifically Derek Ryan. He's had a bounce back sort of run of games here after being injured. He's been one of our best, most consistent forwards since he's popped back into the lineup here. And, I think we're just seeing Mangiapane blossom even more. He's been probably our best forward all year, I would say, from start to finish. Sure. Most consistent, yeah, for sure. Still not getting a ton of ice time. He's still, I believe, 5th among forwards for ice time. So obviously Gaudreau, Monahan, Lindholm, Tkachuk all playing more than him. But I'd like to see that gap close a little bit. as far as the decor, like what I've seen from Hannafin and Tanev again. Tanev had a great couple games against Toronto the past couple days, and Austin Matthews specifically. You saw Matthews get a little frustrated yesterday, breaking sticks and stuff because Tanev was shutting him down a little bit, and he leveled him in I believe it was the second game on Saturday. Leveled him right into the boards too. So couple rough games for Matthews against Tanev and Hannafin pairing there, but yeah, I have liked some of the stuff under Sutter, but there's certainly still lots of stuff to work on as we've mentioned. But what do you like under Sutter so far?
I mean, outside of the obvious, the compete level, I agree. You can just tell the Flames usually have a little bit more jump in their step in games, although they have come out for a couple flat periods, which, the Flames are notorious for. But I believe they are going to be held accountable when they perform like that. So that's a step in the right direction. Under Daryl Sutter, I like that he simplified the game for them. They're not trying to do this east-west nonsense, cross-ice passes all the way up the ice, tic-tac-toe kind of stuff. They're playing north-south, chipping it in and going and getting it, which, has its drawbacks for sure. The dump and chase, as I've alluded to, I don't think they're built for that. But, in the short term, it does simplify things and allows people to try and get in there, forecheck, play Daryl Sutter style hockey and grind out a win. Which they have done on a few occasions. Like, I don't think they should have beat Toronto 4-3 2 or 3 days ago. But they ground out a win there. I do like the defense first approach. I know he switched a few tweaks in our defensive zone and our defensive zone coverage, not redoing the whole system, because he said there's nothing wrong with the system. It's our execution within that system. So he's made a few little tweaks there, and it seemed to be paying off. They're limiting shots to 8-9 shots a period instead of 16 to 20 shots a period like they had been trending with Jeff Ward. I like that. I love how our defense has been performing outside of Valimaki. I think he's been a little wishy-washy. And then also the Nesterov, Shillington, too many turnovers in that regard. But outside of that, I think Gio's performed okay underneath Sutter. He's still showing his age for sure. But Hannafin and Tanev, I mean, what can you not say about them? They're doing awesome, for lack of a better word. All the stats are in their favor. They had a little bit of a rough time against Toronto last night. They got scored on twice, I believe. But it is what it is. You're gonna have that. So I've already talked about simplifying the game, north-south. What I do like is he's saying all the right things, in my opinions, too. Or my opinion, not my opinions. He's telling it like it is. Like his comments on, I've only had 2 great goalies. I've had Jonathan Quick and Mika Kiprusoff, and then I have a real good one here. I love how he's talking about, I'm not pulling the goalie. The goalie's got to be in there battling like all the rest of them. So he's already called out Markstrom a little bit, who I agree needs to step it up a little bit. He has not been the same since he's been injured. That's probably because we worked him too hard in the first part of the season, trying to hold it together. But I also like what he's saying on how they need to play to the media. I like what he's saying in terms of, we cannot play run and gun hockey with Toronto, with Edmonton, with Winnipeg. We will lose because we do not have the high-end talent that those teams have up front. And I think, well, A, Calgary fans, B, Calgary management need to hear that, because we don't. We do not have high-end talent on this team. We have good players, but we don't have great players, and that's the problem. That's always been the problem in Calgary. I like it that we're not going to have any more questions or any more. The conversation is not, well, is it the coach's fault, is it the playoff, or is it the player's fault? It's all on the players now. The coaching narrative has been taken away with this hire. So I like that as well. So I've seen a lot of positives. I mean, offensively, we've done half decent underneath Sutter so far, but after 6 games, you can see it's starting to wean a little bit. The same old flames are starting to come out. The turnover machines are starting to come out. The lazy plays, the checking hasn't been as tight over the last couple games either. They're getting away from Daryl Sutter style hockey already, which has got to be infuriating for him because you could just tell him that behind the bench he's like running up and down, and which I also like. He's getting involved. He's pulling players aside. He's trying to coach.
Yeah. Certainly seems like there's a lot more of that going on. We've seen many shots of him, hunched over and getting in players' ears, like either giving them words of encouragement, patting them on the back and saying, keep going. Or, some criticism as well. Like, you got to be better there. So, you didn't really see much of that under Ward. Maybe it's just a case of maybe the broadcast not picking it up or something. We're just not seeing it all the time, but maybe they're focusing it more because Sutter's behind the bench. I don't know, but
I didn't see it once with Ward. He's always stoic and just sitting in the middle of the bench there.
Yeah. So the communication seems to be better. And as we know, that's a strong suit of Sutter. Everyone's going to know where they stand. Everyone's going to know their role. And so, yeah, that's another positive. Anything else you wanted to talk about on the positive side, or you want to move to what we don't like?
No, I think that's good. I mean, with all that being said, the Flames are 4-2 under Sutter, so it's not like they're not performing underneath him. I mean, they're doing what they have to do, although they have a steep hill to climb because, these 3-point games are killing us. Like Montreal, Vancouver having 2 back-to-back 3-point games. Winnipeg sliding a little bit now, and it's a tight race, but it's slowly becoming a tight race, not including Calgary.
Yeah.
We've dug ourselves a pretty big hole here, and we have to get out of it. But that being said, they are 4-2. They are around 600, 65% hockey underneath win percentage. I'm talking about with that underneath Daryl Sutter, and that's where they need to be for the rest of the season to even have a sniff at the playoffs. I think they're going to have to go closer to the 700 hockey to actually make it into the playoffs. Although we do play each team ahead of us head to head, several times still. So there is we can make up the ground. I'm not confident though. Let's move into the dislikes. So what I was trying to wrap up the like section with is we are 4-2. So it is a step in the right direction under Sutter. So, but I'll throw it to you. What are you not liking under Sutter?
Well, as you said, we're not built every line to play dump and chase hockey. The Gaudreau-Monahan line specifically, I know that he's trying to put Brett Ritchie there to try and play that style, but it's just not the style that Gaudreau and Monahan are good at. When Gaudreau had 99 points a couple years ago, he was 5th in the NHL, or top 5. I can't remember the exact position, but he was top 5 in controlled zone entries that year. And he's just not built for the dump and chase style. He's built for the possession game. But in saying that, Gaudreau he's been good this year. He's been their most dangerous offensive player, but it's just come back to that my main concern about him. Can he be the best player on a championship team? And that's just my overall concern. Love the guy. He's been exciting to watch here for a long time. I'm not trying to be like Eric Francis and run him out of town. It's just he is what he is. I don't believe, and I've heard Rhett Warner talk about this on the morning show too, is can those two guys specifically elevate their game and put their team on their back? And I'm just not 100% confident, especially if they're going to be playing this dump and chase style. I mean, with the other 3 lines, guys like Kachuk, Backlund, even Lindholm has a physical edge to him. They're more built for that. Obviously, they have a ton of offensive talent to go along with that. So I think they'd be more successful with that style of play than Gaudreau and Monahan. but they're just Gaudreau and Monahan are not built to play that kind of game. And it's resorted in putting Brett Ritchie, a guy who was on a PTO at the start of the season, all of a sudden playing top line minutes. And, you can't really fault Brett Ritchie. He's doing his job. He's trying to mix it up and get in there. But he just doesn't have the offensive talent to go with those guys. Obviously, he gets in the corners, he crashes and bangs, but whether he's made a big impact, I'm not so sure of that. I'd like to see if Tree Living is hell-bent on making the playoffs this year and wants to, quote unquote, go all in, push the chips in the middle, he's got to look at the top line right wing spot. I know it's a bit of a double-edged sword there because, you want to make the playoffs, you want to try to make a run here, but are you 100% confident that you're a championship team? So do you want to give up a top prospect and a first-round pick to acquire a top-line right winger and then potentially miss the playoffs? I've never envied that sort of position because it's been one that the Calgary Flames have been in for the last 15 years, as Noah Adler puts it on Twitter, a perpetual mediocrity.
Yeah.
So, it's if he wants to make the playoffs and wants to go on a run, he has to address that top line right wing spot. A guy like Victor Arvidsson, I think, would be a really good fit. Ricard Raquel, someone with some more offensive ability to take some of the pressure of being the sole offensive players on that line, like Gaudreau and Monahan are currently dealing with. Just a little bit of help, I think, would go a long way on that line. And then obviously the big elephant in the room, the power play. The power play is struggling very, very much right now. The system with the power play really hasn't changed under Sutter. We're still seeing the bump back, still seeing very static in terms of motion. Just the system overall on the power play hasn't changed, and the results have been pretty much the same under Sutter as they were with Ward down the stretch. So those are my two biggest concerns.
Yeah, one bright spot for the power play was the game winner against Toronto a few days ago with Gio, so that they did finally click, and they did strike when they needed to, and they ended up getting the game-winning goal on the power play, which was a step in the right direction. But follow that up to last night's game against Toronto, their power play was atrocious. Toronto had more chances on the penalty kill than we had on the power play, and that's a consistent theme over the last couple of games too. It has to be better. Whoever is in charge of the power play, do something different.
Yeah.
Work on it. You can't just keep doing the same thing. It's the jig's up. There's no movement. There's no nothing. If you look at the best power plays in the league, they're constantly moving, shifting, changing angles, dumping the puck all over the place. The Flames just rim it around the boards. That's all they do. They can. There's no drive to get it to the middle of the ice. They bring it back to the point. And then there's the muffin from Giordano wrist shot that barely makes it through right in the goalie's chest. So they got to do something different. But
yes, and with the whole motion and being somewhat static in terms of motion, they're easy to penalty kill against. You see teams like Toronto be able to pressure them so much easier than other teams. They always seem to be fumbling the puck a little bit on the power play, and then that allows the penalty killers to close the gap. And then, of course, it makes it a bit harder to execute a play when you get a little bit more pressure due to that lack of motion and that little bit of puck management problems that they're having. So, like you said, the Flames go 0 for 3 on the power play yesterday. One power play goal could be the difference there. Obviously, they didn't score 5-on-5. The game finished 2-0, but you get one on the power play in the second period, perhaps, and could change the whole outlook of the game. You tie it at 1 instead of going up 2 for Toronto. So the power play definitely a big factor going forward. Can they turn it around? Only time will tell.
Yeah, so I mean, the power play is not well, I mean, it might be Sutter's fault. He could change it, but getting back to what we're not liking under Sutter, I agree with you. It was good, lots of good points on our top players, Monahan and Gaudreau. Outside of Monahan's 2-goal game there that he had against Montreal, he's been invisible, and so has Gaudreau. And I've been saying this for a couple of years now, and you can attest to it, Adam, even outside of this podcast, that I don't think we're ever going to win with Gaudreau, and I don't want to be a Francis and run him out of town. And I'm going to clarify something when I say that. Not in his current role. He cannot be the star offensive player that you're relying on to drive your offense. That is not, especially when it comes to playoff time, that is not in a position where Johnny Gaudreau is going to be successful. He has to be on your second or third line, depth scoring guy where you can kind of insulate him a little bit and not rely on him 100% for driving your offense. So we're not built that way. He's supposed to be our star. He's supposed to be our offensive stud, and he's quickly proving he's not going to live up to that. He has gone 19 games now without a 5-on-5 point. Not good enough. He's got some power play points. He's got 24 points this season. They all were in the first half of the season, or first 9 to 10 games for the most part. He's been quite quiet since then. And when your top players are not being your top players, does this sound like a familiar narrative for the past 3-4 years that we've been saying? You're not going to succeed, and it's come to head. I mean, they're 10 points ahead of Ottawa still, but they're 6th in the Northern Division right now. You and I definitely did not see this. I had them finishing 3rd. You had them finishing 2nd in the North Division. And what I'm getting to is, it's very obvious, this is 2 coaches this year, the Flames have trouble executing their game plan. But that's not a coach's thing. The coach lays out the game plan, players got to execute it. And they did that for a couple games, and they looked really good. I mean, they won 3-0 under Sutter. They whooped Montreal twice, and they stole one from Edmonton as well, and things were looking good. But the same thing happened. They turned in Flames. I don't know how else to say it.
They are who we thought they were.
Yes. They can't execute consistently. And since then, they've been a little off. They can't even string together passes anymore. And Daryl Sutter has simplified the game for them, and they still can't execute. That's a problem. And one player in particular that I'm extremely disappointed with underneath Sutter is Backlund. Backlund has been awful this year. And I know he's probably had a few things going on in his personal life. I know he just welcomed a baby boy into the world a couple weeks ago, which likely has been,
as you know,
I can attest to, having a new baby at home myself. It's not the easiest thing in the world, that's for sure. Although it becomes a little easier when you make $6 million bucks a year and can probably have a nanny and stuff to help you out. But he's just got to be better. And the Flames are a different team when he's going. When he's on, the Flames are on, and it's usually a win in the win column. When he's been way off this year.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Like, he's had really good games this year, and the Flames have been successful in those games. And then he's just seems disinterested at times, no engagement, hasn't been using his speed as much in certain games this year, and it's very noticeable. It just kind of seems like he's coasting or gliding out there a lot of the time when the Flames are struggling.
And he's a turnover machine when he's struggling.
And I don't think it's any coincidence that we haven't seen the best play from Matthew Tkachuk as well, because they haven't been playing together. It's been Tkachuk, Dubé, and Lindholm for the most part. And while that was good for maybe the first 5 or 6 games of the season, ever since then, it's just we haven't seen a lot of consistency from them, especially at 5-on-5. So maybe it's time to reunite Backlund and Tkachuk, because they seem to play the best when they're played together. So maybe it's time to put an end to the Tkachuk, Lindholm, Dubé experiment. Because we've seen a pretty big sample now. But yeah, getting back to Gaudreau, just to kind of back up your point a little bit, 1 point in 6 games so far under Daryl Sutter. So
Not good enough.
yeah, I mean,
and it was a goal on the power play when you were already losing 6-3 to the Oilers. So
yeah, exactly. So
or 7-3, sorry. And we were at 7-2, we were losing.
Got to be able, or your best players got to be able to elevate, sort of put the team on the back. We've seen that with, I mean, obviously very different players, but McDavid and Draisaitl put that team on their back so many nights, and we just don't have that level of talent. Simple as that.
Well, yeah, I mean, look how good Puljujarvi's playing with those two. Like without those two, Puljujarvi would not be mentioned in a high note like he is right now. Same with Yamamoto, I believe. They're still good players, but they're not the elite players they are when they're playing with that talent. And we don't have anybody like that. We're a team full of decent and good players. And unfortunately, that's not a recipe for success. And that falls squarely on Treliving. That's his fault. In doing nothing, although I'm sure he tried to do something. I don't think there's a lot of interest in Monahan out there. Gaudreau, I'm pretty sure you could trade for a decent return still, because people know who he is. But I don't know what you're getting for Monahan. If I was a GM out there, I ain't trading for Monahan, judging by what he is. So,
I mean, and I think it was Pinder who brought this up. And I know Pinder isn't the most popular guy out there, but I believe he does have some sources within the organization. He says he believes that they tried to trade Monahan this offseason and they weren't thrilled with the sort of returns that they were projected to be getting. So, I mean, maybe that's a telltale sign, but anything else that you want to talk about Flames wise, or you want to move on to the rest of the North Division?
Let's move on. We've talked enough Flames. I hope they continue, making steps forward. They are 4-2 under Sutter, so you got to give them some credit there. They have to have these next 2 games against Ottawa. You have to have them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You cannot give up a point to Ottawa in these next 2 games. If you do, I'm pretty confident in calling our season's over.
Fair enough. I would agree. I mean, if you can't get 4 out of 4 against Ottawa here, that's all the evidence you need, really.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So moving on to the rest of the North Division. We mentioned the 2 games against the Leafs. The Leafs overall have been struggling a bit, even though they did win against Calgary last night. I believe it was 5 of their last 6 before that. They lost, and one player in particular who seems to be getting a little bit more criticism right now, Freddie Anderson. As Elliot mentioned on the broadcast last night, might be Campbell's net going forward, because Campbell
he wasn't even dressed.
Yeah, exactly. Campbell has been better than Anderson on the whole so far.
Campbell's a good goalie.
He has been. He started to round into form under or in LA the past couple of seasons, and then obviously getting moved to Toronto.
Ironically, with Daryl Sutter.
Yeah. He's been better than Anderson this year, and I listen to Overdrive all the time, the afternoon radio show out in Toronto, and they've been saying that Freddie Anderson's still the starter, but Campbell, there's no doubt, has been playing better than Anderson, and they've sort of had question marks about Anderson for the last 4 years. When it comes to their playoff struggles, Anderson hasn't been great either. It's not like he's been, being peppered back there, and then it's not. They were losing in spite of his performance. Or maybe I didn't say that right. He's been a part of the problem as well, is what I've been saying.
Yeah, hasn't stolen any games for them.
Yeah. Hasn't made the big saves in the big moments, like in Game 7s against Boston specifically. So Campbell, especially with that shutout last night, looks like he might have a little bit of a stretch of games here to maybe lock down the crease. And with Anderson a pending UFA, maybe that makes their decisions with him a bit easier. And bad time to struggle if you're Freddie Anderson.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, if you just look as a snapshot of how Anderson's played lately, you can take the game against the Flames 2 days ago. The Flames legitimately only had one decent goal. The rest Anderson should have had. And, they ended up winning that game 4-3, I think, didn't they? 4-3? Yeah, 4-3 against Toronto. The Derek Ryan goal is the only goal that, should have gone in. The rest were, he was slightly screened on a few of them, but they were all shots from the point that should have been stopped. So I agree. I agree with everything that's coming out of Toronto, although I can't believe I just said that because I disagree with a lot of things that usually come out of Toronto. But Jack Campbell is definitely, now that he's healthy, has a shot, I think, to take the crease from Anderson. He's a good goalie. I've always been high on Jack Campbell. I thought it was a great pickup when they traded for him a couple years. Was it a couple years ago or last year?
It was like midway through last season.
It feels like a couple years ago because of the COVID.
I believe it was between like the David Ayers game and when the pandemic started. So, but he was good in that time too.
Yeah, like I thought it was a great trade that Dubas made there. And we'll see what happens. I don't think Anderson's completely healthy, to be honest, just with the way that he's playing and some of the things he's been saying in the media. He doesn't like where his health's at right now. And that could honestly be a little bit of mental health going on there too. I suspect, when the season's all said and done, you'll hear how much of a slog it was mentally to play this COVID season and play the same teams over and over and over again. And all the changes and protocols, and like they can't even be at the rink for longer than an hour before the game together. So it's definitely what we're going to hear a lot more about that, but still it's not an excuse. Everyone has to go through it. But yeah, no, Toronto, they looked a lot better in the second game against Calgary. So I anticipate they're going to be okay. They're going to turn around. They got too much firepower on that team to just fall apart.
And even though they have been struggling, they're still top of the division or tied with Edmonton. They do have a couple games in hand, so they're still in a very good spot.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime you can score at will like that team, pretty much you're going to be okay. The team that I'm surprised with, I'm going to say is Winnipeg. Like I had no idea that Winnipeg would be contending for, top two spots in this division. I think in my preview, I had them Montreal and Winnipeg battling out for the 4th spot. And I think I actually had Winnipeg missing the playoffs, which definitely hasn't been the case so far. The blue line in Winnipeg has not been as big a hole as everyone was predicting at the start of the season. They're getting some goaltending from Connor Hellebuyck, which will give a little preview to maybe our end segment with our top 5 Vezina candidates. But yeah, what do you think about the Jets so far this season? I've been quite surprised. They're playing well.
Yeah, to give you some credit, you actually had them higher in the standings than I did. I had them finishing 6th in the division, even behind Vancouver, which looks foolish right now. But yeah, the blue line again was a major concern for me, and I don't think Hellebuyck has been as good this year as he was last year, but still good enough to on most nights to give them a chance to win. And then with that offensive firepower, we're seeing Ehlers, Connor take another step forward there.
Oh, Ehlers looks like a new player.
Yeah, definitely, and he might be. Those two guys might be their most important offensive players at this point. Obviously, Scheifele's still there, but a lot of the focus is on those guys now. And with Dubois coming in, just gives them another weapon. Although he hasn't been maybe as spectacular as a lot of people were hoping, but of course, had the quarantine and then he got injured the first game that he played in Winnipeg. But he's starting to turn around a little bit. He's had an OT winner. Had 3 points the other night. So we know they have the offensive firepower. So they can outscore teams on a lot of nights. And with Connor Hellebuyck in net, you're going to be pretty good. So maybe I didn't give him enough credit to Hellebuyck and that forward core. in the preseason predictions. So
How good
yeah,
is Kyle Connor, by the way?
Oh man,
Man, he's good.
Yeah, and shout out to Craig Button. I know he gets a lot of heat for a lot of his stuff, but he actually had Kyle Connor as one of the best offensive players to come out of the 2015 draft, outside of the likes of McDavid and Eichel. He said Kyle Connor was a top 5 offensive player in that draft, and certainly looking like he's right on that one. I know he misses a lot, but he also has some home runs too. So shout out to Craig Button on that one. But yeah, I like where Winnipeg's going, and they still have some game in hands. They've actually games in hand. They've played 31, which is the least in the division, tied with Montreal. So they got, for example, they got 3 games in hand on Edmonton, who's second, and they're only 4 points behind. So lots of runway to go for Winnipeg to move up in the standings still.
Yeah, they've got a series against Edmonton that they're halfway through too. So Edmonton's taken 2 games from them already, but definitely can easily close the gap with 3 games in hand. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll move on from Winnipeg. I think we got to talk about the Oilers. I did have them finishing second just because with McDavid and Draisaitl in a division like this, I think they could eat this division alive, which they've proven that, they're starting to do that. The Oilers are looking good. They're getting some goaltending too from Mike Smith, some pretty decent numbers there too, as well. And to be honest, the blue line is the story in Edmonton too. With Klefbom going down at the start of, not even the start of the season, before the season, there was a major hole that everyone was predicting on Edmonton's blue line, but it hasn't materialized yet. Nurse has stepped up his game. Barry's playing well for them. And, that hole that Klefbom left, I don't think was as large or is as large as it once was. What are your thoughts on Edmonton? I mean, outside of McDavid and Draisaitl, who are obviously stories in their own right. What are you seeing in Edmonton?
Well, yeah, I mean, McDavid's proving that he's a cheat code again. He might get 100 points in this season. He's on pace in a regular 82 game season to get almost 150 points, which is just astronomical at this point. But one guy that we like to dog on a lot because he was a Flame at one point and he had a lot of low moments as a Flame, Mike Smith. Got to give credit where credit's due. I think he would have been in my top 5 Vezina candidates if he had played some more games. Obviously, he was injured at the beginning of the season. He's only played 16, so his sample size is a lot smaller than my top 5 candidates that I have. But the numbers are there. I mean, he's got a 922 save percentage, 234 goals against, and just give me 1 second to bring it up here. Mike Smith has 11 quality starts out of 16 starts. So he's certainly would be in that conversation for Vezina if he had played some more games. But when you're getting that level of goaltending, and Koskinen has bounced back from his earlier season struggles too, combined with that dynamic offense, I mean, that's a good recipe for success. Not unlike Winnipeg in a sense. They're getting solid goaltending. The blue line isn't elite, but it's been good enough, especially with that offensive production from Nurse and Barry on the power play as well. And then that high-end offensive talent that they both teams have. Certainly been a recipe for success in this season's North Division.
Yeah, Larson and Russell have also been pretty steady for them. I mean, they've definitely tightened up their defensive game, and I'll give credit where credit's due there too. Part of that is the goaltending they were getting from Smith, but part of that is also, I think, attributed to the coach. Dave Tippett is a good coach, and he has turned this team around a little bit. They're not nearly as porous defensively as they were in previous years. And of course, with the talent up front, they can capitalize on whatever chance they get. So I would not be surprised if Edmonton takes over Toronto for top spot in the division. I might be predicting that. We'll see what materializes, but they look like a pretty damn good team. They made the Flames look stupid a few times. They've done it to almost every team. I mean, they've beaten up on Ottawa every time they played them. That you can still play the Oilers tough. I think when the physicality gets ramped up, they tend to struggle from time to time. But again, they have the cheat codes that just can put the puck in the net and steal the game from you no matter what you do. I'm liking how Edmonton's playing. It burns in my soul saying that as a Flames fan. I think they could have a shot to potentially come out of this division and play in I guess it wouldn't be the Western Conference Finals, whatever they call it, the top four, the Final Four. As good a shot as any year. It all depends on the goaltending, though. Those goaltending numbers have to continue going forward. If that takes a dip, the Oilers will take a dip as well. So, kudos where kudos is due. See, we're not super biased in terms of Alberta hockey. We're a little bit jealous, Edmonton fans, of your team right now, as you can tell by some of the cheat code comments. But credit where credit's due. Edmonton's playing really well right now.
And we talked about their solid goaltending. More solid goaltending going on in the other West Coast Canadian team, the Vancouver Canucks. Demko has been on another level.
Yeah, speaking of cheat codes over the last 8 games.
Yeah, I mean it's unsustainable. He's at about a .960 save percentage in the last 10 or so games that he's played. So I'm not as concerned about Vancouver as from a Flames fan perspective and making the playoffs. I'm more worried about catching Montreal. But there's no doubt that Demko has been absolutely spectacular for the Canucks, and a big reason why they've sort of come back into the picture here a little bit. The goals against is still a little high, but the save percentage, .921, up there with the best of them. And Demko is just sort of putting the team on his back, and they're doing all of this without Elias Pettersson as well. He's out injured. So bit of a surprising scenario. I know earlier in the season, me included, was giving Vancouver fans a little bit of a rough time for picking Demko over Markstrom, but right now that looks pretty good on their end.
Yeah, I mean, Demko's a little streaky because he definitely has his cheat code moments, like in the playoffs last year, those two games that he kind of stole from I'm blanking on the team. Vegas, thank you. Yeah. I haven't even watched a Vegas game this year. That's how weird this season has been. And then, he really struggled at the start of this year, but so did Vancouver as a whole. And then now he's on a hot streak again. So he's a little streaky. I think once he figures it out and gets a little bit more consistent, that's when people really start to believe in Vancouver. I mean, they've played the most games. So that is going to change, though. After this week, I think it's their 5-day break or their 7-day break or whatever it is. The Flames play, I think, 3 or 4 times over the course of the next 10 days, and Vancouver's off. So that will even out by the end of the month, I think, or very close to the end of the month, maybe the first week of April, and then we'll see really what the standings look like. Because I have a feeling that from that point going forward, it'll be pretty even games. One game in hand at the most, maybe 2, depending on schedule and stuff like that. So, they've turned it around. They played themselves into the conversation, that's for sure. Is it sustainable? No, I don't think so. But we'll see. Only time will tell.
Yeah, especially because even the 2 games they had against Ottawa, or maybe it was 3, I mean, they were getting outplayed, but Demko was just shutting Ottawa out pretty much. Just was a brick wall back there. So yeah, as you said, I'm not overly concerned with Vancouver. I'm more concerned with Montreal from a Flames perspective. But Demko has been absolutely unbelievable. Anything else from the North Division, or do you want to move on to our rest of the league roundup?
Let's quickly talk about Montreal. So, the coaching change, I don't think has had the dramatic effect on Montreal as what was anticipated by Bergevin, bringing in Ducharme and letting go seasoned coach Claude Julien. Oh, that seems like 3 months ago now, but was only probably up just over a month ago. They're solidly in fourth spot. They're 4 points up on the Flames. They're 2 points up on Vancouver with 4 games in hand. That's pretty good spot.
Mm-hmm.
What are you feeling in Montreal?
Well, they're certainly in a good spot right now just because of those games in hand, and they do have a bit of a cushion on a team like the Flames. I think I wouldn't be 100% comfortable if I was a Montreal fan. There seems to be some inconsistencies with them. And Carey Price has bounced back a little bit, but is he back to the elite level? Not quite sure. But then of course the biggest thing with Montreal is not totally dissimilar to the Flames. Do they have that high end scoring talent? Obviously Toffoli's lighting it up a little bit here. Top 5 in goals in the NHL, but just don't believe they have that elite offensive, number one center. Suzuki's very good, but is he?
Kotkaniemi's pretty good.
Yeah,
they have good players, just like Flames. You're right. You're absolutely right. Or at least they're not great players yet. They're still young. A lot of them.
They don't have that elite level talent like the likes of Winnipeg, Montreal, or Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Toronto. So, so they're in a comfortable position. I don't think there should be any panic there, but they certainly can't afford to go on a losing streak. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see if they can hold on to that spot. The Flames beat them twice, but that was on the backs of the Sutter change. They have 5 more games against the Flames, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, the season pretty much going to come down to that, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. All right, well, I think that's enough in the North. That's all I've really been focused on hockey-wise, except for the major stories that come out of the other divisions. Mm-hmm. But let's move on. What's next on the list here? Let me pull it up. Surprises from around the league. So in particular on the list here, Minnesota, the Islanders, Florida, the Panthers, and a certain somebody going off for a 6-point period the other day.
So let's start with the Minnesota Wild. I think a lot of people, including myself, are surprised. I had them finishing 4th in that division behind the big 3 of St. Louis, Colorado, and Vegas. They're currently sitting 3rd. They're tied with St. Louis in terms of points, but they do have 2 games in hand. And no thanks to their leading scorer, the dynamic Kirill Kaprizov, just been absolutely outstanding for them. You've seen the elite talent come from him, leading the league or leading his team in scoring. Just been a dynamic force that's carried a lot of their offensive production most nights. And they're getting solid goaltending as well from Kakkonen and Talbot. They've both been very good for them this year. Guys like Matt Dumba have bounced back. Eriksson Ek is starting to produce a little bit more offensively. He's got 11 goals so far this year. And a couple other guys, Victor Rask has had a little bit of a bounce back year. Still doesn't look like a very good trade for Minnesota, but at least he's contributing a little bit. He's got 7 goals so far this year. He hasn't been like last year, and the year before that was pretty rough. So a lot of bounce back years in Minnesota, and it's leading to some success on the ice.
Yeah, and they've had some key injuries too. Dumba's out right now. Marcus Johansson's out right now. Foligno's out right now. So they're not healthy either, and they're still playing well. Mm-hmm. They've had the dynamic offensive production from I can never pronounce his name.
Kaprizov,
thank you. I was just going to call him Kirill.
Kirill the Thrill.
Kirill the Thrill, there you go. Yeah. I think it's defensively they're a lot better this year. They're 8th in goals against per game at 2.59, and their penalty kill is 5th best in the league at 84%. Those are pretty solid numbers. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the goaltending. Kakkonen was in my running potentially for a Vezina nomination in the list here, but I decided not to go with him. But 2.29 goals against, he's got 12 wins. What more can you ask for? something that needs to be mentioned too is Zuccarello's had a little bit of a comeback too.
Yeah, he's over a point a game right now.
When he signed that extension over there, people were laughing.
Yeah.
People were laughing at that contract. And still, I mean, there's a lot of time left on that contract, and we'll see how it pans out near the end. But he's got 15 assists this year already in 25-ish games, however many they've played. So, I mean, he's not no slouch, that's for sure. They're just getting production from everybody. I mean, Jordan Greenway is scoring from them all the time too, right? So I was always high on Jordan Greenway. He was a Flames killer last year, the season prior to the bubble playoff. It feels like, well, I guess technically it's last year. It feels like 2 or 3 years ago. But they're getting contributions from everybody. So it's a recipe for success, especially in a weaker division too, where you have Phoenix, Anaheim, and LA who are likely on the downswing and looking for a rebuild here pretty quick.
And San Jose.
Oh yeah, right. I knew I was forgetting one. San Jose, yeah. And also with St. Louis stumbling a little bit recently as well. So I'm not surprised. I had them solidly locked in fourth too in this division. But you know, the signs are there that they could do some damage in the playoffs too if they get in. I mean, solid goaltending, solid penalty killing, and contributions from everybody are what you want going into the playoffs. So they're a team to watch. I'm very intrigued by the Minnesota Wild. They're not the Minnesota Wild of old where it was just like trap. Oh, they win 1-0 or something like that.
Oh, the old Tuesday night Minnesota Wild games, eh?
Yeah, like, exactly.
That's kind of a running joke in the Flames market. They're not the boring Wild of old, as you said. They got some dynamic offensive talent there now with the likes of Fiala and Kaprizov. So definitely a team to watch. And yeah, like you said, they could do some damage in the playoffs, no doubt about it. Moving on to the second surprise, one for me that I always seem to not believe in them. I keep thinking, yeah, I underestimate them. I picked them to miss the playoffs the first year under Barry Trotz, and then I picked them again to miss the playoffs this season. But I got to start respecting the New York Islanders because they are second in the East Division. I think I had them finishing fifth in the East Division, if I'm not mistaken. But I believe they were on about a 12-game point streak or something like that. They not 100% sure on the numbers there, but
they were undefeated at home until yesterday. They were 13-0-2.
Oh, that's it, eh? Yeah, that's pretty good, eh?
Pretty decent.
Yeah, but
in the best division in hockey right now, too, we should say.
Definitely. And just looking back at some of their recent results, yeah, they have 3 losses in the last about 15 games, it looks like. So yeah, that'll be good. That'll usually get you up there in the standings.
2 words: Barry Trotz. That's what he does to a team. They're second in goals against per game, 2.22. Penalty kills 10th in the league, steady Eddie, 82%. And they're middle of the pack scoring, so they're getting the offense too. They're 15th in goals per game at 2.9 without like the crazy. I mean, they got Barzal, of course, but outside of that, it's another score by committee team. There's not really some crazy offensive talent on the New York Islanders in terms of putting the puck in the net. It's steady contributions from Eberle, Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, who's out for the season now, which could be a huge blow to the playoff potential, especially in this division. If you slip a little bit, you're going to go from second to fifth real quick. But outside of that one, the Barzal, I mean, it's a team of good players who are playing great.
And I like the way you put that because Barzal obviously leading the team in scoring, but only has 25 points in 32 games, which isn't, it isn't like wow. I mean, it's under a point a game, but they have 11 players with at least 12 points. And
Cizikas, that was the guy I was trying to think of.
Yeah, Cizikas, Ryan Pulak has 12 points. Noah Dobson has 12 points. Josh Bailey almost at 20 points. Jordan Eberle, Anders Lee, although I believe Anders Lee is out injured for a little bit here.
Yeah, I just said that. He's out for the rest of the season.
Oh, rest of the season. Okay. Yeah, so that's going to be a problem. But Nick Leddy, their leading scorer on defense, 21 points in 32 games.
One goal, 20 assists.
Yeah.
Those must be power play points.
Yeah, not a goal scorer. Not a goal
No,
scorer.
not a goal scorer.
But yeah, they're just getting solid contributions from everyone in that lineup. Even Matt Martin's chipped in with 5 goals, 9 points. He's obviously that fourth line.
Pajot's got 18 points. Yeah, scored by committee.
Yeah, so I mean, and then obviously they're getting fantastic goaltending as well from Semyon Varlamov and their young stud Ilya Sorokin, who's come over and been just as good, almost as good as Varlamov. 208 goals against and a 915 save percentage, and Varlamov's at 2.17 and a 923. So when you get in goaltending like that and scoring by committee, you usually end up second in the division. That's how that works.
Yeah, for sure. I suspect, I don't think those home numbers are sustainable in the long run. They will probably come back down to earth a little bit. With the run they've been on, they're 20-8-4. But they're only actually they got quite a cushion on Philly now, actually. I didn't think they were as comfortable in second spot there. They're actually tied for first points wise, but tiebreaker goes to Washington, of course. They're 8 points up on more than that. They're 11 points up on Philly. So yeah, they have quite a cushion now. I didn't realize they were that high. So if they do slip, I don't see them falling out. Philly's got to turn a few things around, mainly in the goaltending department, to get in there. But Murderers Row division, though, I tell you, Washington, the Islanders, Pittsburgh, Boston, Philly, I mean, they're all good. The Rangers are starting to turn around and make a charge here, although I think it's a little too late. They're a little too far out. And then there's lonely old Buffalo, which we'll get to. But yeah, no, the Islanders are playing well. I didn't have them as good as they are either. I thought they'd be in the 4th spot, I think. I think I had them making the playoffs still, but I don't remember. It seems like forever ago. I'll have to check on that. But I thought they'd be battling to get in, which it looks like they're not. I mean, they're still battling, but it looks like they're probably going to make the playoffs if things trend in the continuous direction that they're headed. So,
yeah. So Islanders, a big surprise this year for us. The next big surprise, a bigger surprise, in my opinion, the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, by far.
The Joel Quenneville effect in his second season as Florida head coach. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah.
Although I heard, can't remember if it was Overdrive or the morning show here in Calgary. Just one. It's hard to believe. Just one Jack Adams Award for Joel Quenneville in his career, and that came as coach of the St. Louis Blues prior to his run in Chicago.
Really? He didn't win the award at all for his work in Chicago? He won 3 Stanley Cups.
Exactly. It's a little bit almost unfathomable. And that kind of award usually seems to go to the team that surprises most people. So maybe this is his year, being as how bad Florida's been the past 5 seasons. And
I did not know that. That's crazy.
A good example of how good he's been. So they're still, we all knew they could score. I mean, that was never an issue. They're 3rd in goals for, but they've improved their goals allowed to 11th in the league. So still not elite in terms of the amount of goals they give up, but they're definitely a lot better. And when you score at the rate that they do, you can allow a few more goals than some of the top teams in the league. So, in saying that, Sergei Bobrovsky has you're starting to see signs of the.
You're off the case, Bobrovsky.
Yeah, you're off the schneid, Bobrovsky. Still not overly impressive numbers, a 290 goals against and a 906 save percentage, but they're definitely trending in the right direction. He doesn't have a sub 900 save percentage anymore, and starting to see a little bit more consistency out of him. And then the backup, or maybe 1A, 1B at this point, who knows, Chris Drieger, giving them really solid goaltending at a 222 goals against and a 924 save percentage.
Yeah, Jigger's been real good for them.
Definitely some big years in Florida in terms of goaltending and defensively. I know Aaron Ekblad, Mackenzie Weegar, and Keith Yandel are all having really great seasons. And as we said, scoring never an issue in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we thought Florida would be for a few years now. I mean, they've had some pretty good teams in Florida and have underperformed under Dave Talon and previous coaches.
Dale.
Dale Talon. Thank you. And, you know, you're starting to see a little bit more talk around to be honest, what we've been saying for a couple of years now, that Huberdeau and Barkov are one of the top pairs or top duos in the league. Mm-hmm. They just play in Florida and don't get the attention that they should. I mean, we've both been quoted on this podcast as saying Barkov is the most underrated player out there. He's consistently putting up points. I mean, he's got 35 points this year in 30 games. Huberdeau, oh my God. John, I'll just call him John. It's time with him.
Were you confusing that with Humidor? You're a big cigar guy.
Maybe, yeah, could have been. Huberdeau and Barkov are both tied with 35 points. So I mean, they're producing. They're doing what top players should do. I digress. But Florida's another team. They're getting a lot of offensive contributions from a lot of people. I mean, Hornquist turned out to be a pretty damn good player for Florida. He's got 24 points. Carter Verhaeghe's got 23 points. No one predicted that. Even Ekblad's got 20 points, 10 goals and 10 assists. So it goes on and on. And Duclair 14 points. That was a pickup in the offseason that people probably didn't attribute to contributing much, but looks like he's contributing on a regular clip there. So when you get those depth guys contributing like that, and then your top guys are performing on top of that, and you're getting the goaltending, I mean, that's a recipe for success right there, and it's showing. They're second place in the whatever that division's called now. The COVID division is what I call it.
Central Division. The Discover Central. Come on, don't you know that?
Central, right? No, I don't know the names of any. Well, I mean, I know the names, not the sponsors, though, except for the Scotiabank one, because that's all you see. Yeah, I mean, second place, only behind Tampa, and Tampa is looking like another juggernaut this year. So, yeah, I mean, what more can you say? They're ahead of Carolina by points. Yeah. And what more can you say? They're a surprise for sure.
And we've talked about their ability to score, and it's proven. And they have 6 players who have at least 10 goals this season. That is Vetrano, Ekblad, Verhaeghe, who's come out of nowhere. I mean, he's a league minimum guy from or $1 million from, I believe he played in Tampa last year. And then Hornquist, who's had a really good season. And then Huberdeau and Barkov, obviously. So 6 players with at least 10 goals. Lots of depth of scoring there. And then with Quenneville and their goaltending coming back to life a little bit. It's been a recipe for success in Florida, and their only team ahead of them is the juggernaut, the Tampa Bay Lightning. So maybe we'll see a battle of Florida in the playoffs this year. That would be something.
That would be something for sure.
All right, moving on to the next surprise, the New York Rangers. Not the whole team, just one player specifically, Mika Zibanejad, who's had a bit of a rough season to this point, but broke out in the second period against Philly a few nights ago, earlier this week, ties an NHL record for most points in a period with just 3 goals, 3 assists in one period. Not bad. Not bad.
Too shabby.
So Mika Zibanejad, hopefully he can use that as a catalyst to improve his overall season numbers. I believe he only had 3 goals to date, or until that game. So he matched his season
doubled
total.
His goal total in one period.
Exactly. And, he was a guy who was threatening to score 50 last year, if not for the pandemic. So Definitely a bit of a rough season, but he's come back to life a little bit. And tell me if you know who their leading scorer is. Can you guess?
I know his name. It is not someone who you would immediately think of with New York, though. It's a Russian name. Starts with a B.
You'd be correct. It's Pavel Buchnevich.
Buchnevich, yes.
Yes, 28 points in 29 games. Now there's a big asterisk on that. Of course, Artemi Panarin has missed 10 games due to injury or family-related issues.
Staying alive.
Yeah, he's only played 19 games as opposed to 29 from Buchnevich. But so not the Rangers on a whole. They're still sixth in the East Division, but Mika Zibanejad had to highlight that. Don't see 6-point games overall too much, let alone 6-point periods.
Yeah, you also don't see the end result in that game either, 9-0 very often. That was just a drubbing.
And I didn't have them in the disappointments, but I guess we should. A 9-0 loss for Philly and out of a playoff spot right now. I think me and you had them maybe finishing 1-2 in the.
I had Philly finishing second. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe I had them finishing top two. I'm not sure if they had them as winning the division, but it's been a struggle, certainly between the pipes. Maybe another goalie graveyard moment for Philly. I know Philly was the other spot in the league in addition to Calgary over the last few, probably decade, that haven't been able to find a goaltender. And then now Carter Hart comes in. He's been good, struggling this season though.
Yeah, he's definitely been struggling this season. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but league worst. Goals per game, 3.55. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not league worst. Second worst.
Behind Ottawa, I'm guessing.
Probably, yeah. And penalty kill is dreadful as well. 26th in the league. Anytime you're only getting 74% on the penalty kill, that's not a very good success factor right there. It's interesting because Philly really didn't do a lot in the offseason either. I mean, they did sign Gustafsson from the Flames, a little bit of D depth, but they pretty much kept their team as is, kind of bet on the talent they have there. And they have talent on Philly, don't get me wrong. But it always comes down to goaltending with Philly. I mean, when they made it back to the Stanley Cup Finals several years ago now, it was on the backs of outstanding goaltending performance from, what was his name?
There was two. There was Michael Layton and Brian Boucher.
Yeah,
that was their goaltending tandem that year, and it was off the charts that year. But just a quick mention here: both of their goaltenders sub 900 save percentage. Carter Hart nearing 4 goals against average too, is 3 as it sits 3.83, and Elliott's up near 3 as well. And really their only change in terms of their forward lineup has come from within. Their draft pick, Joel Farabee, I believe it was from 2019, has come in second on the team in scoring. Once again, not the name that you'd be expecting leading their team in scoring here.
JVR.
JVR has had a fantastic season, leading them in goals and points with 13 and 29 respectively. But Sean Couturier has missed some time. I believe maybe he missed some time with COVID. I'm not 100% sure on that, but Giroux, Voracek they're still really good. They're right up around point a game, but the goaltending is letting them down for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely why they've slipped out of the top 4 spots there. They've dug themselves a little bit of hole, but hopefully they can put it together. I always like Philly in the playoffs. They're a good watch whenever they do get in there, just with the talent they have. They play entertaining hockey too, so I'm cheering for them. I do like Philly.
Yeah, but as it sits right now, they are in tough. They are 3 points behind Boston right now, and Boston has a game in hand. So, I mean, they still got some time to make that up, but they got to start turning it around quick.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on. Who else is disappointing? I think there's some obvious ones out there.
We won't spend too much time on the Sabres because we did talk about them a lot on the previous episode. But the big news: Ralph Krueger out as head coach. Seems to be
news?
Well, yeah, not surprising news, I guess we should say. But Ralph Krueger out as the Sabres head coach. I've never really understood the sort of hype that Krueger gets. Well, maybe not hype is the right word, but he seems to be very well respected, which, he did take that Europe team in the World Cup of Hockey in 2016 to the semifinals, if I'm not mistaken. He's very well respected. He's very liked by players, but maybe a little bit too liked. Maybe a little bit too soft. Maybe he doesn't have that accountability factor like a guy like Daryl Sutter has. Maybe he doesn't have that fear that he strikes within players. It's more of a softer approach, but never really had success in the NHL. I know he's been very successful with the Southampton Football Club over in England, the British Premier League.
Yeah, that translates.
Yeah, exactly. And it just never really understood the hype about him as an NHL coach. He's had 2 different stops now in Edmonton and Buffalo. Obviously not the best markets in terms of their previous results. I mean, both teams have been in playoff droughts for a long time, outside of the one season for Edmonton under Todd McClellan. But yeah, just an absolute mess, not getting any scoring from any of their top players outside of Eichel, who is now out injured. I'm sure he's not in a rush to get back to play for this Buffalo team right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just an absolute disaster, to say the least. And now they're having COVID problems again. Their game against Boston was postponed last night. So just an overall mess.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just counting up the losses here. 13 in a row with about 3 or 4 postponed COVID games in there too. So it's been a long time, almost 17 games that Buffalo has put a point in the win column. So that's got to be one of the worst streaks in history, I would think. That's a long streak.
They're certainly on track for having one of the worst seasons in recent memory, up there with, Ottawa of a couple of years ago and Colorado, I think it was like 5 years ago, and then of course another Buffalo team in the year where they famously tried to tank for McDavid/Eichel. They did get Eichel, but yeah, historically bad stuff we're seeing from Buffalo right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say. I think the problem there is the owner in Buffalo and him meddling into things that he has no idea what he's doing, personally. Yeah. And if he continues to do that, they're going to continue to not put a playoff team on the ice in Buffalo, unfortunately. And all this is, they are spent to the cap too. That's the shitty part about Buffalo. I mean, this is going to be a full-on rebuild again, and they didn't even get the return from their last rebuild. So, and case in point, you have O'Reilly, who is a very talented number 1 center and a great leader, who just got beat and worn down in Buffalo, asked for a trade. He gets traded. Next thing that happens, Stanley Cup winner, Conn Smythe. You have Patrick Berglund, who's a long-time NHLer, 700-plus games, flat out saying, I'm not playing in Buffalo. See you later. Time to call it a career. And then there's another obvious example too, where Pat LaFontaine, revered Buffalo Sabre, like by the fan base, by every legend. You got Patty LaFontaine there being a coach or a GM. He quits halfway through a season. Something ain't adding up there. What's the common denominator there? I think it's
the ownership, the Pagulas.
The Pagulas, made all their money in natural gas, which makes them hockey experts, I guess. So they gotta look at themselves before anything's going to get better in Buffalo. That's for sure. Yeah,
because as you mentioned, money is not an issue there. They allow them to spend to the cap, and they're never afraid to spend big on a player. But kind of their season in a nutshell here. Mike Commodore, Flames legend, with his good old Masters leaderboard. He posted this 5 days ago. The top 7 names on the board, all in the running for the green jacket, all Buffalo Sabres.
Oh, really?
So number 1, Rasmus Dahlin. So this was 5 days ago. I'm sure these numbers are a little different now, maybe. Rasmus Dahlin in the pole position here. He's just running the whole tournament here. Minus 27 after 2 rounds.
He's now minus 28.
Yeah. Sam Reinhart in second at minus 20. Eric Stahl minus 18. Olofsson minus 17. Hall minus 17. Miller minus 16. And Montour minus 15. So some good rounds in Buffalo so far this year.
Holy. Oh, man. I feel sorry for Buffalo fans because they're one of the best fan bases out there. They're so passionate about the Sabres and Buffalo.
The league is better when Buffalo's good.
Yeah, it's hard to see them struggle like this because they have the talent on this team. They're extremely performing. They're not getting anything from anybody. So, Sorry, Buffalo, hang in there.
maybe in 5 years you'll be back in the playoffs at this point.
Maybe. That's a maybe with an asterisk to the side.
Yeah. Another team that has been disappointing for me has been Dallas. Now I know they get a little bit of a pass because they haven't played as many games as some of the other teams here. Just looking at the standings right now, they're 6th in the Central Division right now, but they do have 5 games in hand on both Chicago and Columbus, who are sitting 4th and 5th. They're only 6 points behind, but just haven't been as good as we thought they would have been. I actually had them missing the playoffs, but I didn't think they'd be this level. I believe they had a really bad stretch here at one point. They had like 1 win in 10 games or something like that earlier in the season. So after being in the Stanley Cup final, you would expect them to be at least making the playoffs. I had some concerns, but I think Chicago has come out of nowhere, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts. They're still sitting in a good spot, but Dallas has to start turning around immediately.
Yeah, I mean, they were hit pretty hard by COVID at the start of the season too. So they've had some key injuries. Shocker, Ben Bishop's back on the injured reserve.
Shocker there, right?
Tyler Seguin's on the injured reserve. I don't know. Did he come back yet, or is it still from the offseason?
No, I believe he hasn't played a game yet this season. He's got to be getting somewhat close. I'll actually Google that while you...
It says April 7th return, so 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you say? They're middle of the pack in terms of, stats wise. A little bit towards the lower end in a few areas, but goals against, they're 6th in the league. Like goaltending, I don't think it's been an issue for them. Happy Bulin seems to have played half decent for them. It's scoring. It's always scoring with Dallas.
Do you mean Khudobin?
Khudobin. I always say Happy Bulin. It's a mental block in my head. I just see the K.
We're not going home.
I just see the K and automatically think Happy Bulin. Damn you, Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
But scoring is the problem in Dallas. It always has been. Jamie Benn's only got 15 points this year, 5 goals, not good enough. When your leading scorer is veteran Joe Pavelski with 27 points, you're going to have a problem. Especially with the talent that they have on that team. I mean, you got a Heiskanen with the same amount of points as Jamie Benn, and he's a defenseman. So not surprising because Heiskanen is, top-end talent, top 5 D-man probably in the NHL. But you should not be equaling the point production of one of your best players, one of your marquee players, so to speak. Definitely getting paid like a marquee player, arguably not a marquee player anymore. Similar scenario to like Gaudreau in Calgary too. So
another big injury for them has been Radulov. He's only been limited to 11 games so far this season. Has 12 points in those 11 games. So when you got Sagan and Radulov out for long stretches here, I assume, it's not as surprising to see that they've been struggling a little bit. And as you said, Ben Bishop also out, probably only at 90%. He seems to sit out like if he's not anywhere close to 100%. If he's had that sort of reputation that even if something's small, I'm sure the injury is bigger this season because he hasn't played at all. But he's had that sort of reputation that if he's not exactly 100%, he doesn't go.
Yeah.
So bit of a disappointing situation there if you're a Dallas Stars fan. But
yeah, and you see like their playoff performers from last year, and Justin Dowling only has 4 points. Only played 11 games, but still. Jason Dickinson, who was huge for them in the playoffs, only 9 points. So they're struggling offensively for sure, and that's why they are where they are.
Yep, and same thing with Guryanov, only 5 goals in 27 games. So, Dallas has to turn it around quickly. Maybe they can sort of stay afloat until Sagan gets back, and maybe Sagan is the tonic that they need.
Just throwing this out there. Could Guryanov be a trade target for a certain right wing spot on the Flames?
I mean, I don't know if I'm Dallas, I wouldn't be giving him up. I know he hasn't been spectacular this season, but I wouldn't be looking to trade him. That's for sure. We've seen what he can do when he's at his high point. So.
Fair enough.
I don't know about the cap situation and all that. I haven't really looked too far into it, but
I don't know what his cap situation either. I don't have it up.
But yeah, Dallas needs to get it going pretty quick. And another disappointment that I have here, not that they're out of the playoffs, and I still think they'll make the playoffs, but St. Louis hasn't been as dominant as we've sort of expected. Obviously, they're still really good. I still don't understand them letting go Pietrangelo and signing Justin Falk to the big deal. I think Falk's been pretty decent this year, but for me, it just didn't really make sense to not give away, but let your franchise player, your captain, walk away and sign a very inferior player in Justin Falk to a pretty big ticket. Just something about that just doesn't sit right with me. Binnington has been good, but not great this season, even though he just got rewarded with a big fat contract extension. 6 times 6, I believe, was the numbers on that. But he hasn't been.
I don't know how that's going to work out for St. Louis.
He hasn't been spectacular this season. Let's just say that. He's been sort of right around average, 2.73 goals against and 907 save percentage. But yeah, just overall been a little bit of a down year for St. Louis. Not 100% sure of why we're seeing that. We're seeing some good performances out of Jordan Kyrou. David Perron's having another really good season. But just overall, just very underwhelming, I guess you would say, from the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you summed it up nicely there. Definitely not performing as expected, for sure. They're lucky they're in a weak division. They're still in the playoffs. So, I mean, you get in, who knows what happens, but definitely not as good as what we were predicting this year. So,
and to be fair, they have had some big injuries now that I'm looking at it. Tarasenko's only played 7 games so far this season, and Rob Thomas, famed singer of Matchbox 20, only played 12 games so far as well. So, I mean, that's 2 pretty big guys for them. But
oh, that was a good one. Barbashev's been out or is out right now too.
Yeah. So, and Parayko. So maybe it's not surprising after looking at some of the injuries, but overall, you expect St. Louis to be a little bit higher. But yeah, so that
I got a question for you. Is Tarasenko's body made of glass?
He seems to struggle a lot with injuries. I know, especially shoulder. I believe it was a couple seasons ago he missed a great deal of time as well due to a shoulder injury. And even during that cup run, I don't think he was 100% healthy. Oh, well, I mean, no one's really 100% by the end of a Stanley Cup run. But yeah, just looking at some of his numbers here, we know when he is in the lineup and when he's playing at the top of his game, he's a dynamic player, pretty much a lock for 30 goals. Yeah, even last season only played 10 games out of the around 60 to 65, depending on how many games he played. So he's definitely had some issues with some injuries in the past seasons. But before that, 76, 80, 82, 80, 77. So it's been somewhat recent. He's had the injury problems.
Yeah, it just seems like he's been injured a lot. Like they're always talking about him being out of the lineup. So just more of a humorous comment. Because I, to be honest, I don't remember a Blues game in recent memory where he's been in the lineup. So that's why that was the basis for those comments. So, yeah, well, it is what it is.
All right. Anything else you want to add to them or any other disappointments, or do you want to move on to a little bit of trade bait here?
Yeah, no, I think that sums it up. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head or any team.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the TSN trade bait list. Lots of interesting names on here. I think the two guys, especially because they're both defensemen that are going to garner a lot of interest. If definitely one, number one on the board here, Mattias Ekholm, Nashville, not looking good to make the playoffs. They are 7th in the Central Division. Even behind Dallas, and Dallas has 5 or 4 games in hand, I believe. And yeah, just too far behind at this point. Mattias Ekholm would be a wonderful addition to any team. Such an
Good
underrated
cap
guy.
hit too.
Yeah, only 3.75. I believe he's signed for 1 more year after this season as well. So the price is going to be sky high for him for how good he is. Left shot D, great cap hit, and you get a little bit more. So you get 2 playoff runs with him, essentially. So I assume the price is going to be pretty high, at least a first-round pick and a pretty good prospect as the bare minimum, I would say. That seems to be the going rate for rentals and rental plus 1 year type contracts. So Ekholm, another name on here, David Savard, again, right shot D, UFA, another good cap hit, 4.25. Seems to be built for the playoffs, kind of that rough game, but solid in his own zone. So 2 guys that are sort of leading the charge there for defensive reinforcements will garner a lot of interest, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Ekholm for sure there'll be lots of teams knocking on Nashville's door, inquiring what the price is going to be for him for sure, because he is one of the more elite defensemen that I've seen on a trade bait list for the trade deadline in some time. So definitely could step right in and boost the team's defensive rank immediately. So wouldn't be surprised if Winnipeg knocks around there.
That'd be a hell of an addition for them. Either one of them, really. I mean, I know the right side is a little bit thin there as well. They do have some left shot D there with Morrissey, but yeah, the right side or either side could use an upgrade in Winnipeg. That would just make them that much more dangerous.
It all comes down to acquisition cost, I'm sure, for them too, because they did give away Roslovic already to get Laine out of there. So they might not have the pieces to sweeten that deal a little bit, but you never know. They could work something out. They are pretty deep in the forward ranks. So
I would imagine Nashville asks for their very highly touted defensive prospect we saw at the World Juniors, Ville Heinola. I imagine would probably be the bare minimum in terms of an ask for Nashville. But a couple interesting forward names here as well. Rickard Rakell, number 3, Taylor Hall, as we know, on that 1-year deal. I'm sure if Taylor Hall in the right situation could be a really good addition. I know there's that sort of losing trend that seems to follow him around other than that 1 year in New Jersey where he put the team on his back. But, could be a good pickup for a team like Colorado. We've sort of mentioned Hall with Colorado a couple times over the past couple seasons. Taylor Hall obviously would not be the main focus of any team trying to shut down Colorado. It would be McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog. So could be a situation where he could flourish. But yeah, what do you think about Hall, Rakell? I see Nick Foligno here, Palmieri, Granlund, lots of interesting forwards as well.
I love how they have Chicago's cap space on here as trade bait.
Yeah, Toronto's top prospect.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, Ricard Raquel is an interesting piece, just because he struggled a little bit. He only got 6 goals this game or this season so far, but he is playing on Anaheim. They're struggling in general to put the puck in the net. Not a good team there. Great cap hit, 3.79. I can see. Well, he'll definitely be on the move. I think could potentially be a fit for Calgary too. But I heard the asking price is sky high for him, and rightfully so. Anaheim's not going to give him away for nothing. That's for sure. I would not be taking a run at Taylor Hall with the 10-foot pole. He's proven that he's not worth $8 million in my mind. It's now 2 teams he's gone to, and has not really had the impact that was anticipated on them. I like Palmieri. I liked him last year, to be honest, as a potential to take a run at too. 4.65, decent cap hit. He's only got 12 points and 4 goals, but he is playing on New Jersey.
Yeah.
So I do like the way he plays. I think he is a pretty solid top 6 right winger. Maybe middle 6, I should say. Second line, third line guy. A name that is on this list that really intrigues me is Bobby Ryan, strictly for a rental. He is a right winger. There's not a lot of right wingers on this list, but he only has $1 million cap hit and could potentially slide in. I know he definitely. I'm not sure if it was substance abuse problems or there was some off ice trouble with him.
Yeah, I believe it was alcohol. Yeah,
alcohol. And he's kind of made a little bit of a comeback. He's got 6 goals and 13 points playing on Detroit, so not bad. Playing for the Red Wings, $1 million cap hit. I think he could step in and be a relatively cheap addition to a team. Like I wouldn't think he would have to give up much to Detroit. Probably a draft pick.
Yeah,
maybe a second rounder, or a third rounder, and see what you can get out of Bobby Ryan for a season. I mean, I wouldn't re-sign them or anything like that. I'm talking strictly rental. I think he could be a good depth add for some of those teams gearing up to make a run. Jake DeBrusk, obviously on this list too. I think it would be something to poke around at, just because he's only on under contract for 1 more year at 3.68. That's pretty decent cap hit for the player that he is. He has struggled this season for sure in Boston. They might be willing to move on from him. But other than that, I wouldn't be trading for a lot of people on this list.
Yeah, and the only way I would trade for Hall is if you do have those top end guys where he doesn't have to be the number 1 guy like he was in Arizona. I think he could flourish in a place like Colorado. Just off the top of my head, I can't really think of some other spots. Like maybe it'd be hard to fit him in cap wise, but like a Tampa Bay, that would just be another weapon to add to. So I don't think they really need him, but if you have those top guys that are going to take the bulk of the attention from other teams, maybe he could slide in there and be a good addition to a second line. Certainly the shine has come off of Hall. I understand that, especially this season in Buffalo. Oh boy. Nick Foligno is another name on here. Seems he's obviously a little bit older, so he'd be strictly rental as well, especially with that 5.5 cap hit. Only 5 goals, 12 points, but as we know, Columbus, not exactly the most high-flying team, but a guy you can always rely on for that compete and that work ethic. Really good in the playoffs. I think he could be a good addition depending on the price. Wouldn't give up a first round and a prospect type thing for him, but maybe a second rounder and a mid-level prospect. Maybe you can have him for that if Columbus falls out of the race. I'm sure they won't give him up if they do end up making the playoffs. But yeah, some interesting names. Like you said, some names that I wouldn't touch at all here. And then, of course, the big thing is, when are we going to see all this action? Because we know if there's going to be cross-border trades, we're going to have the 2-week quarantine that you have to deal with still. So could be a quiet actual day of the deadline, which I believe is April 12th. We could see a lot of the action come prior to that, which I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, to be honest, I think likely this coming week is when some of that trade action is going to kick off, just because of that 2-week quarantine.
And we've heard Kyle Dubas say that they're in the mix as well to buy. I believe he was quoted as, top prospect, first rounders. They're all available for the right deal. So they'll certainly be buyers because they're well positioned to make a good run here and could use some help, some depth scoring up front because their back end has been pretty solid this year. But yeah, lots of rumors out there. Let's see if any of them actually come to fruition in this tight cap COVID world that has been limiting to trade so far this season.
I think Toronto would be best served to bolster their blue line more than add some depth scoring up front, to be honest. I think they scored their way out of a lot of problems already. And outside of Brody and the obvious Riley, thank you, there's not a lot of depth there. So I'm still not sold that Hall is a solid second pairing defenseman. I think they would be best served. You never know; they might take a run at Ekholm too, depending on what's out there. So
yeah, that's been out there as well. Them taking a look at Ekholm as well.
Got a decent cap hit. They'd have to move some money out, but yeah,
Kerfoot
interesting.
is a name mentioned there, I think, because he's making around the same in terms of cap hits. So yeah, be interesting to watch some of those top names, see where they land or if they go anywhere.
Yeah, I'm interested about the trade deadline this year. I'm not sure what it's going to be with this whole COVID thing. So
definitely think it's going to be the least active deadline of the last decade, probably, I would imagine. Or maybe even in NHL history, who knows?
Watch it just be a fire sale.
Yeah, of course, that would make sense, right?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else there? Do you want to move on to our favorite segment?
Let's move on. We've been talking a long time. We're probably upwards on 2 hours here, I think. Yep. Getting pretty close.
All right. Let's move on to everyone's favorite segment, including ours, the OTI Top 5. And today we got this one was suggested by me. I kind of wanted to talk about this one. So if you want to suggest any future topics in future episodes, hit us up on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it may be, with future suggestions. Top 5, again, doesn't have to be hockey related. It can be favorite foods, favorite movies, favorite bands, whatever you want. We'll be happy
a
to
music
talk about.
one. I like that. We should do one of those coming up. Yeah, send us your music ones there, listeners. We'd love to talk a little music. I'm a music buff, so anytime music gets mentioned, I'm all for it. So,
all right. So today's topic is top 5 Vezina candidates this season. So, no shortage of options here. You'll probably see some common names here between our lists here. But do you want to start it off with number 5? Because I'm trying to pull up my list right now.
Yeah, sure. First, before I start, I'll say I have a couple honorable mentions on this list. They just don't have the sample size to really be included in the Vezina conversation. But their play, is trending towards that. And that is Thatcher Demko in Vancouver. I mean, with the .960 save percentage number over the last 8 games, that is phenomenal goaltending. Unfortunately, you shit the bed at the start of the year, so kind of played your way out of the Vezina talk. But if that continues, he might play his way right back in that conversation, especially if Vancouver comes back and makes the playoffs on the back of Demko. That would be quite a story. So honorable mention to Thatcher Demko in this. And also want to give a shout out to Lankinen in Chicago. He has been quite a find by the Blackhawks. Definitely not Vezina caliber yet, but if the trend continues the way that it's going with him, you could expect to see his name on this list in short order, I think. He is a fantastic goaltender and the only reason Chicago is in the playoff race right now, as we've alluded to, for various reasons. But yeah, those are my 2 honorable mentions at the bottom of the list that didn't quite crack the top 5. But number 5 on my list, I have Varlamov from the Islanders. 13-6-3 record, 2.17 goals against, which is top 10 in the league. Top 10 in save percentage as well, .923. 3 shutouts. And the reason why he's number 5 on my list is because he plays behind a fantastic defensive system. So he gets a little bit more help than some of the other goaltenders on this list. But having a great year, one of the reasons why the Islanders are, 11 points up on the playoff cushion there on Philadelphia, and tied with Washington at the top of the Murderers Row division in hockey this year. So definitely needs to be considered in this. I did not see Varlamov having a year like this. He's playing really well. He's surprised, back when he was on the Avalanche and got traded to New York, I was like, when they signed him to the $5 million deal there, I was like, oh man, that is a huge overpay for Varlamov. But he's proven otherwise. He's proven to be a pretty solid NHL goaltender. Definitely surprised me, that's for sure. So number 5 on my list, Sergei Varlamov.
Semyon Varlamov.
Sorry, Semyon.
Well, just to continue that trend, he is also number 5 on my list. Obviously you mentioned all the numbers there. 15 quality starts out of 22 starts so far this season. So very high numbers there for him, and goals saved above average. He's also 5th in the NHL at that. So if anyone doesn't know, goals saved above average is basically a stat saying it takes into account chance quality and shot quality from opposing teams. So basically his goal saved above average right now is 10.06. He's saved 10 more goals than he should have, basically. Looking at it, that's what that means. So anytime you're in the positives for goals saved above average, means you're performing your expected goals against. So yeah, he's well above that with 10.06. So he's number 5 on my list as well.
Oh, you're getting to the Uber analytics. I like it. I've never heard of some of these goaltending analytics, so that's good. I'm sticking to more of the traditional stats, so you're doing a little bit of a deep dive. I'm assuming there's probably going to be some overlap on here, so this will be good. Number 4 on my list, I have good old Flower, Marc-Andre Fleury in Vegas. Tough to argue with what he's done this year. I mean, 3rd in the NHL with 16 wins. 2nd in the NHL with 4 shutouts, 3rd in goals against average, 1.88, and 1st in save percentage at 9.33, tied with Vasilevsky from Tampa Bay. And playing a lot of games with the injury to, oh my God, I'm blanking on his first name, Robin Leonard in Vegas too. Vegas is tops. Are they tops in that division? Yeah, they're 1st in that division. Yeah, okay. They were tied if they weren't. Definitely, I mean, Vegas is being talked to be in the Final Four again this year. I mean, they've been in the league for like 3 years already, or 3 years, and they've had 2 deep playoff runs already, and potentially on their 4th year, they might go all the way again. So it's, and that's Marc-Andre Fleury. He's been the goalie for all those runs for the most part. Yeah, just having a fantastic year. So number 4 on my list is Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah. And in addition to the Vegas talk, one thing that sucks, I get why it was a rule or why it was put in place when they came into the league, but they are exempt from the expansion draft upcoming because everyone thought they'd be terrible. And
what? That's not fair.
That was part of the deal that they had got coming in as a expansion franchise, that they were exempt from the Seattle expansion draft. So they don't have to worry about that stuff like every other team. Whether that's fair given their results since they've been in the league, maybe you could change that. But I mean, that's a much deeper conversation that we're not really qualified to talk about. So
I'm kidding.
Number 4 on my list, a little bit of disagreement here. I have Thatcher Demko. He's played.
Really?
He's played. He started 23 games, so that's actually 2 more than Marc-Andre Fleury. Has the same amount of quality starts, and his goals saved above average is less than Fleury's. So just a little hint that you'll probably be hearing about Fleury soon on my list. Thatcher Demko, again, goals saved above average. We've seen the save percentage as high as it is. He's put the team on his back the last 10 to 15 games or so. 10.49 goals saved above average. So even better than Varlamov. And not getting the benefit of the doubt playing in front of that Trotz defensive system. So Thatcher Demko is number 4 on my list. He's been the reason why Vancouver has been so good this last stretch. I was going to say this season. Obviously, they haven't been good over the stretch of the season, but I think they were losing in spite of what Demko was giving them earlier. Obviously, Holtby was getting some starts at the beginning of the season as well, but Demko definitely in the top 5 for me, which has been surprising considered where Vancouver was earlier this year.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I was definitely considering him. But I think there's a couple other goaltenders that are more deserving to be on the list, but you put them on there. Good to see. All right. Number 3 on my list, I have Connor Hellebuck from the Winnipeg Jets. Not as strong a contender as previous years, for sure, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that he does not have a very good defensive core playing in front of him. And he's still putting up some pretty decent numbers. So he's got a record of 13-9-2. The Jets are contending for the number 1 spot in the NHL, or not the NHL, sorry, the North Division on his back. So he's got a .911 save percentage, but he's also second most shots against in the league at 752. So with a 2.83 goals against average. And like I said, not a very good defensive core in front of him, although they are proving to be better than a lot of people thought they were. So good numbers. Second most shots against in the NHL. That's why I put him on my list at number 3.
Fair enough. He would have been, so spoiler alert, he's not in my top 3. It was between him and Varlamov for me. So I think, you could make the case for him to be in the top 5 easily, for sure. But I went a little bit of a different route. I have Fleury at number 3, like you mentioned. Put Vegas on his back a little bit here. 15 quality starts, and he's actually second in the NHL for goals saved above average. He's saved 14 goals, or 14.71 goals more than he should have, based on quality of the chance and high danger chances and shots against and all that. So Marc-Andre Fleury is number 3 on my list for top 5 Vezina candidates.
Nice. Yeah. And I should add, one of the best goaltending setups in the league with the golden helmet and the golden pads. I love Fleury's get up.
Yeah. His golden helmet definitely a lot better than the players' golden helmets.
Oh yeah, those are awful for the players for sure. All right, moving on. Number 2 on my list. I have a feeling that Adam and I are both going to have the same 2 goalies at the top of this list.
Yeah.
But the Colorado Avalanche, Philip Grubauer. Not as well known of a name on this list, so that's one factor why he's a little higher than the other guys here. But having a stellar year, 5 shutouts, 18-7 record, 3rd highest save percentage in the league at 9.29, and number 1 goals against average in the entire league, 1.74. Had a little bit of a shaky start, but has played pretty consistent since then, and Colorado has consistently climbed the standings because of it. So definitely the question mark coming into the season was goaltending in Colorado, and I don't think it's a question anymore. If Grubauer stays healthy, they're going to be just fine. He's putting together a pretty solid season, and hence why he's number 2 on my Vezina candidate list.
Yeah, and health is the key there, as you said. He's been good when he's been healthy, but just hasn't been able to stay healthy on a consistent basis. So once again, he is number 2 on my list as well. Actually has the most quality starts in the NHL this year at 17 out of 25 starts so far. Once again, top 3 in goals saved above average. He's 13.31, so not as high as Marc-Andre Fleury, but certainly deserves to be in this conversation. Just not one of those guys that gets talked about a lot. Obviously, I think we're going to have the same number 1 here. And then guys like Fleury, Varlamov, and Hellebuck, they're always in the conversation. Well, not Varlamov, but not really mentioned among the top goalies in the NHL. But when he's healthy, certainly plays like it. But moving on to number 1, should we just say his name at the same time?
hold on. One more thing on Grubauer that I forgot to mention. The Avs are third in goals against per game, so that's pretty strong. And it showed in last year's playoff run where the Avs kind of fizzled out with subpar goaltending when he went down. So he is a big piece to that team, and he seems to be healthy this year, and they're getting the results from him. So that's why he deserves to be on that list, even though he's not talked about on that team. Nathan McKinnon overshadows all the conversation on that team for the most part.
And Cale Makar.
And then Cale Makar too, of course. Yes.
All right. So, number one, I think it's a pretty clear choice here.
Bobrovsky, no, just kidding.
Yeah, Bobrovsky. David Riddick. No, I'm just
I actually have Dubnik in this spot. Or no, sorry,
Martin Jones. No, let's just say it. From the Tampa Bay Lightning, Andrei Vasilevsky.
How could you not have him number one right now?
This guy is unbelievable. Only 3 shutouts, but he is the league leader in goals saved above average, 17.42, which is 3 higher than any other goaltender in the National Hockey League. 1.86 goals against, 933. He's actually tied on my list here. He's tied with Marc-Andre Fleury for save percentage. And, you know, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, he plays for Tampa. You know, they're the highest scoring team in the NHL, or one of, if not the highest. So he doesn't have to be as good, but he's been the best goalie so far in the NHL for me.
Yeah, I mean, his record is 23-1. And that's in a pretty decent division. That's with Carolina and Florida in there too, who's playing really well. So it's not, he plays for Tampa. Absolutely. But I'm just looking for the stat here I was quite shocked, actually. He's also faced the 4th most shots in the league.
Yeah. Tampa, while they're good in terms of offense, and I'm sure maybe like the high danger chances aren't as high with them, but he's certainly seeing a high volume of shots. 100 more. Well, he's played 3 more games than Fleury, but faced almost 100 more shots than Fleury. Not as much shots as Demko, but they're not good because of their offense. They're good because of their defense, goaltending, and offense. Everything's firing for Tampa Bay. So.
Yeah, there's only 3 goaltenders out there that have seen more rubber this season than Vasilevsky, and that's Lankinen in Chicago, Hellebuck in Winnipeg, and Demko in Vancouver. So he's faced a lot of rubber. And with those numbers, a 23-1 record, the only goaltender in the league with 20 wins, well deserved to be number 1 on here. He's a fantastic goalie. He's mentioned every year in the Vezina talk, and this year I think he's even found another level, because last year he struggled a little bit until the playoffs, where Tampa eventually turned it around. So if they keep getting goaltending like that, Tampa could be poised to repeat this year again.
Yeah, they would be my odds-on favorite right now. And as I mentioned, league leader in goals saved above average, which just means he's making saves that he shouldn't. He's making huge highlight reel saves every night. And he's a big reason why Tampa has been as dominant as they've been this season. So there we go. That's the OTI top 5. That wraps up our top 5 Vezina candidates, and that wraps up another episode of Off the Iron.
A long one, but a good one.
Yeah. Obviously we went a little bit longer on Calgary today because of the big news, the coaching change, and Daryl Sutter coming back in. So wanted to get a good discussion in there with us being Flames fans, and I like what we got in the episode today. Lots of good stuff. But
yeah, absolutely. Any last comments or anything like that, or should we tell us who this is brought to by and get out of here?
Just want to say that obviously us being Flames fans, I know we're critical. We're very critical, but we want to see them succeed. We're not hating on the team. We're not hating on the players. We want to see them succeed. We're just not overly confident in terms of their long-term projection here, but we obviously want to see them play in the playoffs. It's always better when Flames are in the playoffs. So
of course, why would we?
Here's hoping. that we see some more consistent results. But once again, Off the Iron Podcast is brought to you by Rocky Mountain Barbecue Catering. Visit their website at www.rockymountainbarbecue.ca to request a free quote for your event when we can have events again in the near future, hopefully. Visit them at 5303 68th Avenue Southeast Calgary to pick up yourself a lunch combo, open 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on weekdays. Also, don't forget to follow us on our socials, Facebook and Instagram at Off the Iron Podcast, on Twitter at Off the Iron Pod, and the Gmail, offtheironpodcast@gmail.com, as well as the YouTube. If you want the visual fix, this will be up in a few days' time, hopefully. And
is that a little bit of a dig?
No, hey, I'm not digging. You got lots going on. You got a full-time job, new dad. I don't make any comments on that. It's up to you. So once again, everyone, thanks for listening. We always appreciate every listen, and we'll throw it to Evan here with
we're getting listens from all across the world, which is pretty cool. Adam and I started this for our own benefit. We just wanted to talk hockey on a weekly basis, and would have been happy if we got 2 listens or hundreds of listens. So it's pretty cool to see. We're getting plays all through the States, all through Canada, the UK. We've got quite a few listens over in the UK as well, and then several through Asia as well, and some of the the Eastern Bloc in Europe as well. So it's been fantastic. So we appreciate every listen, absolutely 100%. And we're going to close it off as always with a positive message. Keep your heads up out there. I know there's been tough times over the last year and a half, including for Adam and I, through this COVID situation, but there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to come to an end, hopefully by the end of this year. We've seen the return of fans and stadiums and in some of the US teams in the NHL. So things are going to get better. Stay positive. We're almost through this. Let's get through it. Keep your head up is what I was trying to say there in that long-winded blurb. But I think we'll, with that, cue the music.